Now, I've said many times in videos and on stream that Heart of Fear is a considerable step up over Mogoshon Vaults. And Mogoshon Vaults is just a nice entry-level raid, which actually drops lower item level than Heart of Fear and Terrace of Endless Springs anyway, so you kind of expect it to be a little bit easier. When it comes to Heart of Fear, I was quite pleasantly surprised by how few bugs there actually was. In fact, across the 6 bosses, there was only really one that made the fight considerably easier, and that was on Blade Lord, where Windstep was actually doing no damage, and it's one of the things that makes the fight a little bit more difficult, because the damage that's left behind from Windstep, it does a lot of damage. Like, you have to play around it, and because that wasn't there, it kind of made Blade Lord just a complete loot pinata, to be honest with you. But all the other bosses, from what I saw, seemed absolutely fine. We had the odd strange bug on Amber Shaper with people in constructs where they would just die for no reason whatsoever, and, you know, little things that teething problems you kind of expect. It was the first round of testing. All of that stuff will be fixed, ready for the second round. Exactly the same as they've done for Mogoshon Vaults. But overall, how hard really is it? Now, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't think it was half as difficult as I was expecting. And the reason for that is because I've played on other servers that I probably shouldn't talk about, but I always do. And honestly, even on normal, let's forget about heroic and use normal as an example. I've done a couple of full clears of Heart of Fear and Terrace, and it felt incredibly face roll. Like, I know you're thinking, oh, well, it's normal, what do you expect? Yes, I do expect it to feel quite easy because it is normal, but it still felt a lot easier than I was expecting. And on heroic, the thing that you can't escape is personal responsibility. And this is going to hurt a lot more on 25-man than 10-man, absolutely no doubt. So when there's those debates about what's more difficult, 10-man or 25-man, or the 25-man guilds laugh at people doing 10-man heroic because 10-man heroic's so easy. When it comes to Heart of Fear, I would have to agree wholeheartedly, because you need 25 people that can handle a lot of personal responsibility in Heart of Fear, whereas in 25-mans most of the time, you can get away with carrying 2 or 3 people. When mechanics go out, you just pray it don't go on those people. Whereas in 10-man, it's a lot easier to get 10 people that can manage that personal responsibility. So it's actually just the roster that makes Heart of Fear easier on 10 heroic than 25 heroic, I would say personally. And I'll touch on what some of that personal responsibility is, but let's just break down the bosses and kind of my experience with them on the beta and what I think will be the pain points for most guilds. Firstly, Imperial Vizier Zor'lok. Now, this is the first boss of the raid, and I would honestly say I think it's one of the more difficult bosses in there. I think the second, third, and fourth boss are all easier than the first, and probably only Amber Shaper and Shek'zeer, which is the fifth and the final boss, are more difficult. And quite honestly, even Amber Shaper, if you've got one person in your raid that can spec tank, they don't even need to actually be able to tank, and you get them to do the construct the entire fight, then it's easy. If they're confident doing it, it literally makes the rest of the fight significantly easier. But I will go over that when I actually do a proper breakdown of the mechanics, and I'm not going to call it a guide, but I am going to do an overview of all the bosses probably in the next couple of weeks. So subscribe. Quick, get to 100k. Thanks. So what makes the first boss, Zor'lok, difficult is attenuation. Basically, there's 3 different platforms. All the mechanics on all 3 platforms are very easy and require practically no personal responsibility at all outside of the attenuation platform. You can't simply say, follow this person and you'll be safe. You can't rely on a weak aura, purely because what we were seeing was sometimes we'd get random green orbs, and now these green orbs more or less one-shot you, spawn from nowhere. And yes, that will be a bug, but if it's a bug that actually was to make its way through, then it makes it very difficult to have a weak aura to do much more than tell you which direction to go in. Because even something as basic as DBM, Deadly Boss Mods, it tells you whether you need to run left around the boss or right around the boss. But then it is completely on you to make sure that you're not getting hit by the hundreds of discs that are coming out, and then the fast and slow-moving green orbs. This will be the first pain point. The thing that makes the bosses difficult is you're handling 2 platforms at a time all the way until you get to the boss in its final phase. So when you finish the first platform, you're then doing the second platform, while the first platform spawns an echo of itself, which carries on doing the mechanics that are specific to that platform, all the way up until the end, once you've got people with a firm grasp of attenuation and they can reliably get through the attenuation multiple times. It's all about just big burst and big damage at the end, because you don't want to be in that phase too long. And that's because in the last phase, the standard way of doing the boss that has been that way since original Mist of Pandaria is to split the boss and the echo. You'd have the echo at the entrance, and then you'd pull the boss from corner to corner, basically making it quite easy to avoid attenuation. Well, on the beta, I'm gonna call it a bug, but it could be Blizzard making it intentionally more difficult, or having it how it was intended to be originally, at least for our group, anytime we moved the boss too far away from the Echo, the tank lost threat and we wiped. So we come to the conclusion that that's how Blizzard have intended it to be in Classic, and we had to make adjustments. And the adjustments literally came down to just making sure the Echo and the boss were as spread out as possible without the tank for some reason randomly dropping aggro, praying that you stay alive throughout the first double attenuation where both the boss and the Echo cast it, and then hoping that the boss is dead before they do it again. Now that's not a foolproof strategy that I would ever want to put in a video saying this is a guide on how to kill it, because quite honestly I'm saying it's impossible to deal with the mechanics of the fight successfully, which is of course not what I'm saying, but we clearly couldn't find a way to actually make the mechanics work with the distance that we could get the boss from the Echo. But either way, we killed the boss, and it is a difficult first boss on Heroic. I would say both on 10 and 25-man. I saw loads of 25-man Heroic streams where they were all wiping to this boss for hours. So in week 1, I would probably say this might be one that you skip if you're limited on time. Now, the one thing I want to put out there is, what is our experience as a guild? You might be thinking, oh, well, you know, they've been playing on private servers and getting prepared and killed all these bosses on Heroic loads of times, so of course they're going to kill it on the beta. Well, no, that's not actually correct whatsoever. Our guild, as a group, have never killed any of these bosses on Heroic. The only bosses that we'd killed on Heroic elsewhere was in Mogoshon Vaults. In fact, most of our raid hadn't even killed these bosses on normal, so it was a proper, fresh learning curve. There's 1 or 2 people in the group that have cleared this on Heroic, or killed at least, let's say, 3 or 4 of them on Heroic recently, and then there's me with a terrible, terrible memory. I'll put that out there. I haven't killed them recently, but I did do it on a seasonal server about 2 years ago, so that was the last time I physically killed them. But trust me killing a boss 2 years ago means nothing, because I would have forgot it 2 days afterwards. God, I need a drink again. I was accused last time I had a drink during a video that I was sponsored by Pepsi. I wish. So I had to go with just a plain cup. So anyway, yeah, mixed levels of experience, some from absolutely none on normal, all the way to some of us that have killed them on Heroic recently or a long time ago. And then the second boss being Blade Lord. This is the easiest boss in here. I just want to put that out there straight away. But the one thing that makes it slightly difficult wasn't working at all on the beta, so couldn't really get a real idea on difficulty and how long it would take to get this boss down realistically, because Wind Step wasn't working, or wasn't working for us. So it very well may have been working on 25 Heroic, but it certainly wasn't working on 10 Heroic, and what Wind Step is basically the boss does like a shadow step and then leaves a dot behind on the player. The thing is, this dot does a lot of damage every couple of seconds, and then you're going to get the crossover with special abilities that he's doing. So you have to have ways to be able to protect that person that's got Wind Step on them by putting like a Hand of Sacrifice or a Hand of Purity, or, you know, bopping them, because you can bop it off as well, or hop it off, I should say, Hand of Protection. But because you had none of that micromanaging to do, because there was no dot from Wind Step, it literally just made the boss a loot pinata, so I don't even want to talk about it too much. But ultimately, even when it's fixed, I do see this as being the easiest boss on Heroic in here, so if you're limited on time the first reset, this would be probably one that you don't skip. Garalon absolutely shocked me, because this is one that I thought was going to take a lot more time than it did. If we'd have took it pretty seriously, we would have one-shot it. It was 2. We literally wiped on this boss once, and this was one of them that I expected to be sat at for quite a long time. Now, because I expected to be sat there for a long time, I've got no footage of it, so I'm having to use McNulty's, so shout out to McNulty. I'll put his YouTube channel in the description below. I didn't expect to kill it in 2 pulls, so I hadn't even hit record yet. But overall, if this is how the boss is going to be, it's quite comfortable. We free healed it and we used 2 tanks. There is a lot of healing going out, and we had a Holy Paladin absolutely pumping. But strangely enough, I would say this is easier on Heroic than it is on normal, because on normal, you've got a debuff that you have to transfer around. Again, I'm not going to go into every mechanic, but you've got a debuff that you transfer between people by walking near them, and while you've got it, the boss is going to focus on you, and you're going to move around the outside of the room, just dropping little puddles on the floor. Now, on normal, when you transfer this from one person to another, he does a crush, which he goes up in the air, comes down, does a big amount of AoE damage. Now, this crush does a lot of damage, so if you mess up by accidentally giving it to someone and then taking it back, or someone goes near you that shouldn't have gone near you and now they've got it, you're activating lots of unnecessary crushes that will probably wipe the raid because it'll overwhelm the healers. On Heroic, that doesn't even matter, because on Heroic, crush is on a timer, so it's predictable. You can set up for every time a crush is going to come in, which that makes it dramatically easier straight away. Now, you do have to take higher stacks of pungency, it's called, which increases the amount of damage that's going out to the raid. But because you can plan for these things, because everything's now time-based rather than kind of hoping that everyone does everything okay-based, it does make it a lot easier. And then at 33%, when it goes into the second phase that doesn't exist on Heroic, it's meant to be hitting hard. Like, the boss is meant to be absolutely chunking the tank, where you want to be using external cooldowns on the tank, almost chaining them, like very Algalon-esque. If you played during Wrath of the Lich King, you'll know what I mean. On Algalon, in Ulduar, you would more or less have a full uptime rotation to keep externals on the tank all the time, whenever they was tanking. That's kind of what I'd expect from Garalon's second phase. But he wasn't really hitting the tanks very hard at all, so it was like, cool, the last phase is actually easier than all of the first phase. Happy days. But overall, assuming Garalon doesn't get buffed, as in it was doing too little damage from the AoE or too little tank damage, and it's staying as it is, this again is a very comfortable heroic fight, as in you would do this after Blade Lord, because I'd say as long as you know mechanically what you're doing and you can organise the swaps of the pheromones, it's a very comfortable heroic fight. And then Windlord Mel'jarak. Now, Windlord again is one of those that arguably is easier on heroic than it is on normal, because on normal you have to deal with all of the mechanics, whereas on heroic you don't. You can completely skip the most annoying mechanics, which is the amber trapper mechanics, where someone gets put in an amber trap and you have to click on them. That gives you a cooldown before you can click on someone else. You get puddles that you drop in from you. Like, the amber trappers are really, really annoying. But on heroic, you can actually keep them CC'd the entire time, and all you're aiming to do, make sure you're interrupting the healers, make sure you're using personal cooldowns when the Blade Masters are about to do like a charge that they do, because all three of them will be hitting the same person. Now, normally you get a bit of a warning, as in it tells you that it's on this person. You know, with the use of a weak aura, it will say that they're charging on, I don't know, me, for example. Good example is I'm the only person here. So you can then use a cooldown. Well, we wasn't getting any of that. We couldn't see who it was on. We could set it as a focus, but the damage would go out before they physically switched their target off the tank. It was very weird. So we was just actually using all personal cooldowns each time it was about to come in, because you should only really get them to do it once per ad phase, and you're only going to get 2 ad phases. And to be fair, with enough damage, you won't even see a second set of Blade Masters. So it is very easy. This fight is all about just having absolutely monstrous damage. The more damage you've got, the easier it is. And I know that sounds like, well, that's obvious. That's the same for every fight. But this one is very noticeable. The quicker you can dispatch of all the ads, the quicker you can get the damage amp on the boss and then nuke him down. And what we was doing was trying to stagger that. So basically, when you kill one full set of ads, the boss takes 600% more damage for 30 seconds. So ideally, you want to kill the healers, big pump on the boss till his debuff's about to wear off, then kill the Blade Master. So you get like a full minute nearly of 600% damage taken on the boss. So this may seem like you just want loads and loads of AoE, but actually it's the complete opposite. It don't really matter too much how long it takes to kill the ads. It's about how much single target you can do once the ads are dead. So that's the one thing I'd say, just don't get sort of lured into the, oh, everyone's spec for full AoE, you know, hunters take barrage, and like, you don't want to do that. It don't matter how long it takes you to kill the ads, as long as you can deal with the Blade Masters when they charge people. You can handle a couple of those, it doesn't matter. The important thing is having tons and tons of single target to just burn the boss before you get any more ads. So again, it'll make more sense when we go through this in guides, but ultimately, this is another easy boss. Going from Blade Lord Heroic to Garalon Heroic to Windlord Heroic, and doing all 3 of these on Heroic week 1, I would heavily recommend. Oh god, and then Amber Shaper. Now, when I said about personal responsibility, it's all because of this boss. The personal responsibility that people have got on the first boss by dodging attenuation is absolutely nothing compared to what they've got on this boss. You can alleviate some of that personal responsibility by having someone who's extremely confident with the fight basically be the construct for the entirety of Phase 2 and Phase 3. So what we chose to do was 3 tank it. I just went Brewmaster, even though I had absolutely no intentions of tanking, because all we wanted to do was make sure I got reshaped, so I'm turned into the construct, and then everybody just does the fight as normal. Every time another player gets reshaped and they become a construct, they just get broken out immediately. And then what I'm doing for the entire fight, which you can see very clearly here, is I'm keeping the debuff stacked on both the Amber Monstrosity and the boss the entire time, and just making sure that I interrupt myself, making sure I drink puddles, like the basic mechanics of the fight. But this removes everybody else's personal responsibility. Because if you don't do it like this, then what you're actually relying on is the person that gets turned into a construct to be able to look at their own timers and interrupt their own explosion and save their 6-second cooldown, which is number 1, which is like an attack that also puts a damage debuff on the boss, you're relying on them to press that at the right time to interrupt the Amber Monstrosity as well. Now, trust me, I've done this boss enough times to see that no one gets that on their first go.
Everybody falls the first time.
And you can guarantee after a few hours of doing this, there's still that one person that hasn't managed to actually execute it yet, or another person that hasn't even been turned into a construct yet. And when you're close to a kill, it'll be that person that gets turned into a construct and you're starting all over again. Like, this boss can be extremely frustrating if you're going down the route of relying on everybody to be able to do their job. And I'll put it out there now, I play with what I consider to be good players, like all of them. There's not one person that I ever feel like's getting carried, but people still do learn mechanics at different speeds. It's as simple as that. No matter how good you are, you'll be absolutely amazing once you've seen it a few times and you've got it nailed down. But when it's something that you can't even guarantee that you're going to get to see every fight, sometimes you might only see it, once every 10 pulls. It takes time. But this personally doing it like this makes this boss very, very bearable for me. As in, I enjoy it. It's probably one of my favourite fights in the tier if I'm getting to be the construct, because I'm having to make sure that the debuff doesn't drop from both of them and pay attention to who becomes a construct. Because if it's someone I know is definitely going to be able to interrupt the boss and not fail it, I'll tell them, yep, you get the interrupt, and I'll just carry on focusing on building both stacks. Whereas if it's someone where I'm like, oh, they might not get it, I don't need to say that, but I can just make sure that I'm ready to interrupt the Amber Monstrosity anyway, whilst also making the stacks don't drop off of either. Now, what this does, the last phase is horrific. If you're in that last phase for too long, it's just horrible. There's a lot of mechanics going on. There's a lot of damage going out. Everyone's turning into constructs. You've got these new amber globules that you need to get to cross over to dissipate. It's a nightmare. So doing it like this, where you've got that one guy keeping the stacks up the entire way through the fight, the boss literally dies in 30 seconds. And the new mechanic that is in the last phase, you can ignore. So the last phase mechanic, you get two globules that spawn and they attach, they fixate. That's a better word. They fixate on two random players. Those two random players have to make the globules touch each other. Globules? Oozes? Whatever. You know what I mean. You've got to make sure they touch each other and then they just dissipate. They just disappear. Whereas if they hit you, they explode. Everyone wipes. Like, it's as simple as that. But by keeping your stacks up on the boss the entire way through the fight, you won't even have to deal with one set of those. You might get one or two sets spawn, but they move slow enough that you can just kite them while you finish off the boss. It doesn't matter. So like I say, having that one person, you can make this fight very clean and very easy. Now, Grand Empress Shek'zeer, I can really only give you my honest opinion about normal, because I didn't kill heroic. As I say, we was getting into phase 2 and getting down our positioning, how we want to handle phase 2, but we didn't see phase 3 once. And this is mainly because it was the first weekend of the testing, so we was going through multiple times with fresh IDs, just doing normal clears for everybody in the guild that signed up for the beta weekend to be able to at least experience the content and see it all on normal. And then we just had a 10-man that we was doing in the afternoons where we was working on the bosses on heroic. But what we done on heroic is exactly what we expected. There is a lot of healing. And really, that is all this fight is. Control and healing. On normal, you can completely zerg the boss and skip phase 2 completely. You just go straight from phase 1 to phase 3 by, in the first phase, getting the boss to 30%. That makes life very easy if you've got the DPS to be able to do that. But on heroic, no. Of course, you have to handle at least one phase 2. And I think with good DPS, that's kind of what you should be trying to achieve, is only having to do phase 2 once. Because phase 2 is long, it's boring, it's quite annoying, it's dangerous. And again, I don't even want to go into it too much because it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and talk about Shek'zeer heroic on the beta when I'm going to be talking about private server experience rather than what we've actually seen. So I will save Shek'zeer and talk about it after the second round of testing. But what I will say is all the mechanics on normal worked absolutely fine. All the mechanics in phase 1 and phase 2 on heroic seem to work absolutely fine. And it is just going to be one of those fights that it is going to be the most difficult one in here, in my opinion. Handling phase 2 is key. If you can handle phase 2, you're going to be absolutely fine. But building those traps, having people kite the ads, not getting one shot by them because they do it really, really hard if you're the one that gets targeted and you didn't move out from the group. There's things you can do, but again, once I've killed it on the beta, not next week, the week after, we'll reconvene on that one. And again, when it comes to Terrace of Endless Springs as well, I only done the bosses on normal, so there's not really a lot I can tell you about heroic, but what I can tell you about normal is all of it is very comfortable. It's actually a very fun raid, and to be fair, most of the heroic bosses in there outside of Shah of Fear and Protectors, so when I say most, well, 2 of them, I don't see them being that difficult. Lei Shi and Sulong, I don't see being particularly difficult on heroic. I think Protectors will take quite a few pulls, and I think Shah will take quite a lot of pulls. But just in case you're not aware of what's in Terrace, you've got the Protectors first, which is basically a council fight where you kill one at a time, and every time you kill one, the others get an extra ability. So think Iron Council in Ulduar, if you've ever done that. You got extra abilities added to the fight when you took out one of the Iron Council. Now, you can actually get elite gear from this. Unfortunately, on normal, and I'm only saying normal specifically, not on heroic, but on normal, the easiest way to actually kill the boss is by doing the elite order, which is strange, I know, but you get higher eye level gear from this if you kill the correct one last. Now, unfortunately, elite on heroic, that's not the case. It's not the easiest way to do it. It is going to be worth doing, again, just for those extra 7 item level or whatever it is. But the first boss is a council fight, and the second boss is very much like Vallifrya. Kind of. So you have a night phase and a day phase. In the night phase, you're just killing the boss and moving away from a circle under your feet. In the day phase, you're just killing ads while the healers heal the boss. And then the third boss is incredibly irritating because it keeps disappearing and you have to run around AoE in to find her, which I think was actually bugged. You could just hit her from the middle of the room and then she'd randomly pop up somewhere else. So I don't think this was working quite right. And then Shah of Fear, which again, it's pointless even talking about it on normal because it's like free loot on normal. Honestly, Shah, you just get split up into 2 groups. One group flies up to a platform and kills an ad while everyone else is just nuking the boss. The team that went up and killed the ads come back down because they get a buff and clear up the small ads that are down the bottom. Rinse and repeat. All of these bosses in Terrace of Endless Springs on normal are extremely puggable, like you'll be absolutely fine. If you're a relatively casual raiding guild, you know, and you just want to just raid together with the boys, Heart of Fear on normal and Terrace on normal, and Mogoshon Vaults, obviously going back to Mogoshon Vaults as well. All of these on normal, they have fun mechanics still, even on normal. They're not too difficult. And I think you'll have a good time. Because I know I fixate a lot about heroic, but I fixate a lot about heroic because obviously that's the content that I enjoy doing. But I also do enjoy doing normal. Like, I would say doing normal Heart of Fear and normal Terrace, I've done 2 different clears of those on 2 of my monks. I'd say they were more fun than doing heroic. Obviously, I do heroic for the challenge, but just jumping on Discord with, you know, another 9 of the boys and smashing through normal and getting some gear on ults, like, I enjoy that, and I will enjoy it a lot in tier 14. I've always said tier 14 in Mist of Pandaria is the worst tier, and every tier gets better from there on out. And I still do say that. I still think the raids only get better. But I gotta be honest, I didn't actually mind Heart of Fear. I think Heart of Fear is one of those raids that I'm going to get bored of very, very quickly. Whereas Terrace and MSV, like, I'll still be enjoying those till the day Throne of Thunder launches. But there's just something about the aesthetic and the boss fights in Heart of Fear where I do think that's probably my least favourite. Even though I've just said I enjoyed it, and I do enjoy it, but I do think ultimately it comes down to the aesthetic. I tell you what, I'll leave it there, because I feel like I've said enough about all of it, and I'm probably going to go. Like and subscribe, check out Rested XP in the pinned comment in the description, and I'll see you on the next one.